AI. That's the other thing I want to talk about. AI.
Okay.
Dude, I and maybe I'll go into some of the healthcare portion of AI because I think that that may end up being a very
Sure.
interesting topic.
Yeah.
Um, Imagine right now you're a physician and it took you X amount of time to do certain tasks. One of the things that's been happening over the last 20 years is that you've got more and more paperwork. The hospitals themselves, they want to eliminate the risk of being sued. So one of the things that they do is they document and they over document, and it's left to the physician to really put in all the information because they're the ones that provide the care. So of course they have to put everything down, because if they miss anything and in the future something happens to the patient, they can go back and say, why didn't you do this? So because of that, you need to be very detail oriented when you're taking actions. And what that does is it takes away time for the patient and the doctor to actually fully interact with each other, because the doctor now is dealing with the paperwork. And I think AI can be very good, because what the AI can do is actually work almost like an augmented assistant with the doctor
Mhm.
to help clinically diagnose, to do all the notes for them, and to actually give them more face-to-face conversation. So there are definitely companies out there, and believe it or not, Microsoft is like the biggest player in this space. Like they bought this company called Nuance, which a lot of people outside the health industry may not necessarily know. But if you heard, have you ever heard of Dragon Naturally Speaking?
Mm-mm. Oh,
No.
the text to speech one, or
Yes.
speech to text
Yes.
rather. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So they bought them out, but they have all sorts of crazy products in the works, where basically now physicians will have a product that's sitting in the clinical room with the patient. And so the AI is actually listening to the patient, and it's listening to the doctor. And as you're having this conversation, it's already doing all the notes for you and is being recorded and everything. So
Whoa.
now you as the physician can just say, okay, do this, and it'll automatically do it. Have this order ready for me, so it'll do it. And so once the patient, like once they're done interacting with the doctor, they can go back to their desk, and all they have to do is just approve, 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 deny, 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 approve, approve, approve. And so that's it. And then it'll do all the medication ordering, do all the detailed notes that are there, do the
Wow.
insurance and the billing part. And these are the kinds of crazy things that are just happening on just a patient interaction level. And then if you go back during surgery, they have AI running models where basically they can overlay radiology imaging on top of the patient, and then the doctors can actually put on like a VR headset during surgery and know when they're looking like what parts of the body that they're working on, like and
Wow.
from like as deep as like literally at the tissue level. So before, like if you let's say wanted to, like let's say God forbid something happens and you have like a tumor in your brain, right? Very small tumor, but it's in your brain, it's growing, so they have to remove it. Well, in the past, how would you know that you're removing the actual affected tissue? It's not, it looks like healthy tissue at times, right? So when they're going in surgically to remove it, if you remove too little, it can come back and grow, right? But if you remove too much, it could negatively impact the patient's quality of life, right?
Yeah.
So normally they would err on the side of removing too much, because this way you just make sure that the patient doesn't get cancer, but it could negatively affect the patient. Now imagine instead, now they do a CAT scan of the brain, upload it, and now when the doctor is actually doing the surgery, they're looking down, and literally the AI is saying, this is the healthy tissue and this is the
Wow.
bad tissue. And now they can just cleanly remove the bad tissue. And that's
Wow.
it. And so now the surgical, like the effect is 10 times better. You know, these are, I'm telling you, there is a crazy amount of
Wow.
innovation happening in AI. I think we're only starting to see the surface level of stuff with ChatGPT. There's AI and machine learning models that are happening on the other parts of it that are just amazing. I'll give you another really good example.
Well, you say
Yeah.
Microsoft bought that company, right? Like that you just
Hmm.
described. Microsoft, so
Yeah.
they also have a stake in GPT-4. So like,
Yep.
where's the marriage there? Is Microsoft
Yep.
going to turn into this freaking all-encompassing AI solution for everybody? Like just
Yeah.
download Office 365 or whatever,
Mhm.
and it comes with everything. Whatever. Just
See, see,
get yeah. That's wild. That's
it's
wild.
it's um it's amazing the level of like craziness that Microsoft has going for it. But there's other players in the space that I think a lot of people don't necessarily know about, but actually are doing really well too. Like here's a good one for Amazon. Um, Back in the day, well, not back in the day. Well, technically back in the day, like when you, let's say, had a stroke, like let's say a person has a stroke, they come to the ER, the ER would then recommend the patient get a CT. They would come to CAT scan, they would get a quick head CT to see. And basically a doctor would read it, they would look at it and say, yeah, this patient has a surgery, has a CT that's positive for a stroke. They need to go into the OR and get surgically intervened so that this way the bleeding can stop and the person can survive. And there's a set amount of time where that is possible. After a certain period of time, the tissue in the brain is very very oxygen dependent. So even if, like, let's say you lose oxygen for a little bit of time, the brain tissue in the just starts
Yeah,
to
it
die.
dies. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's very important that if you do have a stroke, that it's found out right away and you take action. So this Israeli company, they use AI and machine learning and to basically find out using AI if the patient is having a stroke or not very quickly. And what happens is when the patient is getting, let's say, a stroke, they go to the CT machine. Those images are still, being taken and automatically being sent via AWS to this machine learning algorithm that's at the same time diagnosing whether this patient has a CT, has a stroke or not. And that if it does find that the patient has a stroke, it'll send an alert via text message to all the surgical teams to get
Wow.
the OR ready and prepped. By the time the patient is off the table and like literally like close to the ER again, automatically all the surgical teams are notified. Everyone's already rushing to the OR. So the time that it took like an hour and a half or hour to get the patient to the OR to do the surgical intervention just got cut down to like maybe 10-15 minutes.
Wow.
And it's crazy because now this is becoming a standard practice across the entire healthcare spectrum. And I know that sounds like oh, just 45 minutes, but
It's
45 minutes
huge.
when it comes to
It's
life and death
huge.
is huge. So
Yeah.
these are the crazy things that are happening where now clinically diagnosing things at a much more faster pace is available now for people. And the radiologists are still involved because it augments their ability to read it, but it's no longer a situation where you're dependent on the human to do the diagnosis. Like you can actually work, and it's very very accurate. That's the other thing too. Like you can't implement something if it's not accurate. But as time goes on, these AI models, they learn, and it gets to the point where they're actually sometimes, and I don't want to say this out loud, but they're more accurate than the humans sometimes.
I'm sure.
One of my friends actually told me about it. Basically, their sales pitch is this: they'll go into a hospital and they'll say, okay, send us 5,000 studies that randomly, it doesn't matter to us, just randomly send them to us. We will run our AI algorithm against those 5,000 studies and tell you every single one that's positive and every single one that's negative. And we'll also tell you if your radiologist missed any of them or not. And so, literally, they'll do it as a trial, they'll send it. And literally, they'll send a report saying, look, your doctor missed this, your doctor missed that, your doctor missed this. And then because they have all the ones that are missed as a benchmark, they realize that, wait a second, we missed a good number of studies
Wow.
that could have saved the patient. So we definitely need to get these guys, even as a
Wow.
second guess. So it's like these are the crazy things that are happening in the
It's a
background, and
revolution. It's a
yeah,
revolution. Yeah.
yeah.
It's a
AI
revolution to
is
work.
AI is a big part of what's going to happen in the future. So there's a lot of companies that are going to benefit. Believe it or not, Meta too. Meta is actually working at NYU, and they have another project where when you're scanning patients, because they can actually decrease the amount of time. If you ever have you ever had an MRI before?
Yeah, a long time
Yeah.
ago. Yeah, yeah,
And you saw how like it took like an hour to do the
yeah.
scan, right? Or sometimes a
Forever.
long time, right?
Yeah.
Because of Meta's AI software, they actually cut the scan time down to like maybe 10-20 minutes where it took an hour before. So
Wow.
imagine the throughput of an MRI now where you don't need to be in there. It's same thing with the patients. Patients don't have to be in that giant metal tube for an hour because of all
Yeah.
the innovations that like these tech companies are making. But see, we look at them as just social media companies without technically realizing that they're actually investing in other parts of the general economy, and it's
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's really crazy.